I stood at the altar in a $10,000 wedding dress, staring into the eyes of the man I was about to marry, and smiling. Not because I loved him anymore, but because I had just exposed him in front of 200 guests, with his mistress sitting in the front row. The best part? She paid for the entire wedding, and didn't know it until that day. Now tell me, would you still say I do? Welcome to True Love Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also share this video. Now let's go into the story. The champagne sparkled in crystal flutes. The soft glow of fairy lights cast golden shadows across the terrace, and laughter floated above the clinking of glasses. Amara stood at the center of it all, radiant in her engagement dress, her fingers entwined with Daniel's as he raised her hand to his lips with a flourish that made her friends swoon. She smiled, but not just with her lips. It was the kind of smile that lived in the eyes, deep and serene. The kind of smile that belonged to a woman who believed she had finally arrived at her happy ending. From the corner of the rooftop, her best friend Lena whispered, "You're glowing. Like annoyingly glowing." Amara giggled. "Can you believe this is real?" "No," Lena said with a smirk, sipping her cocktail. "Mostly because this man just dropped 50 grand on a custom engagement party, like it was pocket change." Amara swatted her arm. "He said he's been saving for this. For us." And it was true, or so she believed. Daniel had always been generous, but never flashy. When they met 2 years ago at a charity gala, he had worn a modest gray suit and spoke with conviction about wanting to build a company that helped others, not just profit from them. He said he was still getting back on his feet, after a business deal gone wrong, and Amara admired that. She herself had grown up knowing the sharp edges of struggle, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs and still found time to teach her how to love gently and dream fiercely. Daniel had given her a sense of safety, of promise. She didn't question it when he insisted on handling most of the wedding details. He said he wanted her to feel like a queen. He said he'd take care of everything. "I want your only job to be falling in love with the idea of forever," he told her one night, holding her hand across the dinner table. And she did. The following weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and indulgence. The wedding planner, someone with a French name she couldn't pronounce, met them in a swanky office filled with mood boards, fabric swatches, and portfolios. "Top shelf only," Daniel had said. Amara hesitated. "Are you sure we can afford all this?" Daniel smiled. "Don't you trust me?" That was the thing. She did. Completely. Her friends warned her that things were moving too fast. But how could something that felt so real be wrong? When Daniel placed the deposit for the glasshouse venue overlooking the cliffs, she cried. It was the same venue she'd once pinned on her vision board. She had shown it to Daniel months ago in passing, not expecting anything to come of it. Somehow he remembered. There were small, extravagant surprises every week. Imported orchids from Thailand, calligraphy wedding invitations sealed with wax, fittings with a designer who usually only worked with celebrities. At each unveiling, Daniel would grin at her reaction like a magician pulling off another trick. "I told you," he'd whisper into her ear. "Only the best." There were moments, brief and strange, when a shadow crossed her heart. Like the time she caught him on the balcony late at night, whispering urgently into his phone. Or when she asked to see the itemized budget, and he brushed her off, saying, "Why ruin the magic with numbers?" But love, when it's blinding and new, has a way of covering cracks with rose petals. Amara spent hours writing her vows, weaving in poetry and promises, completely unaware that someone else, somewhere out there, was funding her fairy tale. Someone who believed she was financing her own. And in that moment, on a warm evening under the stars, Amara toasted to her future with a heart full of dreams, oblivious to the truth curling beneath her feet like a fuse. Her perfect illusion had only just begun. It began with a missed call. Amara was curled up on the couch one quiet Thursday evening, her bare feet tucked beneath her, flipping through the final proofs of their wedding invitations. The room was filled with the scent of vanilla from a candle flickering on the coffee table. Daniel was in the shower, steam slipping beneath the bathroom door, soft music playing from the Bluetooth speaker he'd brought in with him. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One ring. Then silence. She frowned and set it down, distracted. But the moment lingered, like a thread being tugged. When Daniel emerged minutes later, his towel slung low on his hips and droplets of water tracing the lines of his abdomen, he leaned over and kissed the top of her head. "You look serious," he said. Someone called, no voicemail. He glanced at the phone screen. Probably a telemarketer. "You know they've gotten smarter." He smiled, but something was off. His voice was a fraction too light, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. She nodded, dismissing the unease, and slid the proofs into their folder. "The invitations are perfect," she said. "We should approve them tomorrow." "Anything for my bride," he whispered, but he turned away too quickly, grabbing his phone from the charger. It wasn't just that night. It was the way he flinched when she walked in unexpectedly while he was checking emails. The way he kept turning off notifications. The new passcode on his phone. Something she noticed only when she reached for it to snap a picture of their brunch, and the screen didn't unlock. "Security update," he said smoothly, taking the phone from her hand with a soft laugh. "Work's been a mess lately. Clients are paranoid." Then came the receipts. She wasn't snooping. Not intentionally. She was simply looking for her veil invoice in the drawer Daniel said he stored all the wedding documents in. A cream folder marked "Wedding" sat on top, but when she opened it, a smaller envelope slid out. Inside were receipts, dozens, not addressed to her, but to someone named Vanessa Kingsley. $3,200, Flora and Vine Floral Studio $1, $500, Lumiere Calligraphy Company $8, $500, Maison Blanche Bridal Atelier. She blinked. Vanessa? She wasn't family. Amara would have remembered the name. She stared at the papers, heart pounding in her ears, then flipped one over. On the back of the florist invoice was a handwritten note. "Thanks for handling this, babe. I can't wait for our life to finally start. Love, V." A coldness spread through her limbs, dull and creeping. Her fingers tightened around the paper. She sat there for a long moment, breathing in and out, willing the blood to stop roaring in her ears. When Daniel came home later that evening, arms full of takeout, she was seated at the dining table, the receipts spread before her like an autopsy. He froze in the doorway. "What's all this?" She looked up, her voice strangely calm. "You tell me." He paused, eyes scanning the mess, then dropped the bags onto the counter. "Oh, that," he said, attempting a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "What is it?" "A gift," he said quickly. "A friend helping me out. A friend who writes you love notes and pays for my wedding dress?" Daniel stepped closer, hands raised slightly in that placating way she hated, as if she were some fragile animal he might scare off with truth. "It's not what you think. Vanessa is complicated." Amara stared at him, the disbelief turning to something more serrated. "Are you cheating on me?" His silence answered for him. The moment cracked open like a fault line. She stood up slowly, the chair legs dragging against the floor with a screech. "You're sleeping with her." "I was going to end it," he said quickly, moving forward. "Before the wedding. I swear to God, Amara, she helped me financially when I was struggling, but you're who I want. This wedding, this life, it's all for us." Amara's mouth dropped open, but no words came. Her mind was splintering, racing through moments that now burned with new meaning. The late-night calls, the unexplained cash, the sudden ease with luxury. Vanessa had paid for her fairy tale. Her voice came out cold, alien. "She thinks she's building a life with you, doesn't she?" Daniel didn't respond. Amara swallowed the scream clawing at her throat. "You let her believe you loved her, just to fund my wedding?" His face contorted with something like shame, or maybe just the fear of being caught. "She's nothing compared to you," he said, reaching for her hand. She stepped back. That night, Amara didn't sleep. She sat on the floor of her bedroom with every receipt, every piece of evidence, laid out around her like puzzle pieces. She called Lena at 2:13 a.m. "You were right," Amara whispered, voice trembling. "He's cheating." Lena was silent for a moment. Then, I'm coming over. But Amara's voice grew steadier as she stared at Vanessa's signature on a check. Something inside her shifted. The devastation was still there, but a new feeling curled beside it, slow and sharp. Not grief. Not despair. Fire. Let them think she was broken. Let them think they had fooled her. They thought they were in control. But Amara had just begun to see clearly. And she wasn't about to walk away quietly. The silence in the cafe was unnatural, tense and charged like the stillness before a storm. It was a quiet boutique spot nestled in a side street Amara rarely visited. Upscale. Secluded. The kind of place for whispered secrets and expensive apologies. Across from her, Vanessa Kingsley sat poised in a pale blue silk blouse, her dark hair twisted into a flawless chignon, manicured fingers wrapped tightly around a porcelain cup she hadn't yet sipped from. Her eyes, a sharp, calculating gray, watched Amara with restrained curiosity. You said it was urgent. Amara folded her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. It is. They hadn't spoken before today. Their only connection was Daniel and a message Amara had sent from a burner account 2 days ago. No names. Just a simple sentence. You're being lied to. Meet me and I'll prove it. Vanessa had responded in less than 20 minutes. Now here they were. 2 women in love with the same man. One of them unknowingly funding the other's wedding. I want to ask you something, Amara said slowly, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Vanessa didn't blink. Ask, how long have you been involved with Daniel? There it was. The name. Vanessa's lips twitched, and for the briefest moment, a flicker of softness crossed her face. About 3 years. On and off. Mostly on. Why? Amara inhaled slowly. The air in her lungs burned. You're in love with him. A pause. I was, Vanessa said, voice low. I thought we had something real. We talked about marriage. Family. I helped him after his last business collapsed. I gave him money when he said banks wouldn't. I believed in him. Her voice didn't tremble. She sounded like a woman used to being composed, even while being gutted. Amara reached into her bag and slid a thick envelope across the table. Vanessa's brow arched. What's this? Everything you paid for, Amara said quietly. For my wedding. Vanessa's hand hovered above the envelope for a second before she took it. She opened the flap and pulled out the receipts. The same ones Amara had spent nights organizing, marking, cross-referencing. The color drained from Vanessa's face. This can't be, she murmured, eyes darting from line to line. These are my charges. These are my cards. The bridal shop, the venue deposit. I thought, she stopped. Her jaw clenched so tightly Amara could see the muscles twitch. I thought I was investing in us, Vanessa said, barely above a whisper. He told me the money was for our new business, that he needed a loan to get back on his feet. I didn't even question it. God, I even congratulated him when he said he signed a major client. Amara nodded slowly. That client was me. The 2 women stared at each other. Enemies by circumstance, bound by betrayal. Something shifted in Vanessa's expression then. A crack in the perfect mask. And behind it, fury. Not the theatrical kind. Not the screaming, wine-glass-smashing kind. The quiet, surgical kind. He used me, Vanessa said, her voice sharp. He used both of us. Amara leaned forward, her voice calm. I want to destroy him. Vanessa looked up, startled. I want him to know we know, Amara continued, a dark glint in her eyes. But not yet. Not with yelling. Not with texts or threats or messy scenes. I want him to walk into that wedding believing he won. Vanessa sat back, studying her for a long moment. You're not going to cancel? I'm going to make it the most perfect, beautiful wedding he could dream of, Amara said. And then I'm going to set the whole damn fantasy on fire. Publicly. In front of everyone. A silence bloomed between them, not of discomfort, but of dangerous alignment. Vanessa gave a slow, impressed nod. I underestimated you. You're not the only one, Amara replied. Vanessa tapped a manicured finger against her cup. You realize if I go through with this, my name will be attached to a scandal. My reputation, my business. Amara met her gaze. You deserve to know the truth. I deserve justice. And he deserves the fall. Another long silence. Then Vanessa smiled. Cold. Sharp. Satisfied. Tell me your plan. That night, Amara returned home to find Daniel asleep on the couch, the TV playing some muted sports commentary. She stood in the doorway, watching the man who had made her feel like a goddess while stabbing her in the back. There was no remorse on his sleeping face. No guilt. Just peace, the peace of someone who thought he'd pulled it off. She moved quietly past him into the bedroom, shutting the door softly behind her. She opened her laptop and began drafting her wedding speech. Not the vows she'd written weeks ago, full of dreams and fairy tale lines. No, this one would be different. This one would be a blade wrapped in ribbon. The morning of the wedding dawned quietly, too quietly. Amara stood before the full-length mirror in her bridal suite, staring at her reflection as if it belonged to someone else. The silk robe hugged her body, embroidered with the word bride in delicate gold thread across her back. Her skin glowed with a sheen of calm and highlighter, her eyes rimmed with soft copper shadow. But beneath the surface, something coiled and waiting stirred in her chest. Today wasn't just about a wedding. It was about unveiling a man. She turned slowly, running her fingers over the lace of the gown that hung beside her. Pure white. Custom-made. French lace bodice with hand-stitched pearls. Vanessa had paid for it in full. Amara wondered if Daniel had ever imagined the woman financing their fairy tale would be the same one helping to tear it apart. There was a knock at the door. Lena poked her head in. 10 minutes till you walk down the aisle. Amara nodded. Are you okay? Lena asked gently, stepping in. We can still back out. You don't owe anyone this spectacle. I do, Amara said, meeting her friend's eyes in the mirror. I owe it to myself. She slipped into the dress, each button fastened with trembling fingers and steel resolve. When she stepped into the hallway, the entire suite fell quiet. Even the makeup artists paused. Amara looked every bit the bride, breathtaking, soft, and luminous. No one saw the matchbook she carried beneath her calm exterior. No one saw the gasoline she'd soaked this day in. The ceremony was a dream, on the surface. The glasshouse venue overlooked an endless horizon of blue sky and cliffside waves. White petals lined the aisle. A live string quartet played a gentle rendition of At Last as guests found their seats. Phones were silenced. Smiles were permanent. Daniel stood at the altar, handsome in a white tuxedo with black satin trim. His smile was polished, confident. Smug. He had no idea what was coming. Amara walked down the aisle slowly, her face glowing like the sun was shining just for her. Her father held her arm, unaware that the daughter he was giving away had already been taken and returned in betrayal. Daniel's eyes drank her in. He mouthed, "You're perfect." She smiled. The vows were exchanged. His voice didn't tremble once. He said all the right words. "You're my beginning and end. I vow to protect, to cherish, to honor." Amara listened, counting the lies tucked between each syllable. When it was her turn, she pulled out a piece of paper. The guests leaned in. She began softly. "I wrote these vows before I knew the truth," she said. "Before I knew what kind of man I was marrying." A flicker of confusion crossed Daniel's face. "I thought I was writing a love story. I thought I was writing about the man who swept me off my feet. But as it turns out," her eyes moved across the room, "this story isn't just about love. It's about betrayal, deception, and karma." Daniel's smile faltered. The officiant looked confused. A few rows back, someone stood. Vanessa, elegant, dressed in a blood-red gown that shimmered in the sunlight like danger itself. She walked slowly, deliberately, heels echoing against the floor. Gasps. Whispers. Daniel's face turned white. Amara turned to face the guests. Her voice never rose, but it sliced through the room like a razor. "I'd like to thank someone special today. A woman who made this wedding possible. Every flower, every song, every thread of this dress." She turned toward Vanessa. "Vanessa Kingsley, would you please stand?" The audience pivoted. Cameras flashed. Murmurs swelled. Daniel tried to interject. Amara, but Vanessa cut him off. Don't speak. Her voice was ice. She walked up the steps and stood beside Amara, eyes locked on the man she had loved, or thought she had. Amara raised the paper again. This man, this husband, was sleeping with Vanessa while planning a future with me. He lied to both of us. He took her money. He promised her marriage. He told her this was their future. She gestured around the venue. He let her pay for it. The screen behind the altar, meant for a slideshow of romantic photos, flickered. Instead, images of Daniel and Vanessa appeared. Kisses at hotel lobbies, messages filled with "I miss you," and "You're the only one I trust." A collective gasp. Then silence. Then someone's phone buzzed. A text. Then another. Word was spreading like wildfire. Daniel stepped forward, eyes wide with panic. Amara, this isn't the place. No, she said. This is exactly the place. She turned back to the audience, calm and collected. To all of you who came to witness our love today, I'm sorry to disappoint. There is no marriage. There is no happy ending here. At least, not for him. Daniel looked helplessly at his best man. The officiant stepped aside, eyes lowered. Vanessa spoke, voice sharp. For legal reasons, I'd like to mention that I've already filed for fraud. Every dollar, Daniel. Every lie. I'm coming for all of it. 2 security guards appeared at the end of the aisle. Escort him out, Vanessa said coolly. Daniel tried to resist. This is insane. But the guards moved swiftly, and within moments, the groom was being walked down the aisle like a criminal instead of a king. The guests watched in stunned silence. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others applauded. Amara stood at the altar in her white dress, breath steady, heart pounding. She turned to Vanessa. You still want to give a toast? She asked. Vanessa smirked. I thought you'd never ask. Later that night, the venue was nearly empty. Amara sat alone on the edge of the cliff, barefoot, heels discarded beside her, watching the waves crash far below. The dress was wrinkled, her veil tangled in the wind. She didn't cry. She just breathed. Behind her, Vanessa approached with 2 champagne flutes. She handed one to Amara. To revenge, Vanessa said, raising her glass. Amara clinked it. To freedom. They drank in silence, 2 women who had once been played. Now the ones holding the pen, writing the final scene. Not every wedding ends with I do. Some end with I don't. And I never will again. The headlines were merciless. Betrayal at the altar. Groom exposed during lavish wedding. Bride turns the tables. Mistress funded her own humiliation. Viral vows. The speech that ended a scam. Clips of Amara's speech had been filmed from at least 3 angles. TikToks, Instagram Reels, news segments. The moment Daniel was escorted out of the venue had become a meme. #RunawayGroom was trending within hours. But while the world laughed, gasped, and gossiped, Amara disappeared. Not in shame, in preservation. She left the city for a while, packed 2 suitcases, took her mother's old car, and drove toward the coast where no one recognized her. No interviews. No comments. No press releases. Just the sound of ocean wind and her own heartbeat returning to her body. The cottage she found was small, weather-worn, perched on a rocky edge where the sea breathed loud and constant. The walls creaked when it rained. The floorboards slanted slightly. It was perfect. Her first morning there, she woke before the sun. Not because of nightmares, but because she finally hadn't had one. She stood barefoot on the wooden deck, a steaming mug of coffee in her hands, wrapped in a thick sweater she'd stolen from her father's closet years ago. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, and for the first time in weeks, she realized the ache in her chest was no longer bleeding. It had scabbed. It was healing. The girl who once cried herself to sleep over Daniel's lies no longer existed. Amara wasn't naive anymore. She wasn't the hopeful bride, the trusting fiancé. She was something sharper now. Wiser. Quieter. Stronger. She started writing again. Not just in her journal, real writing. She opened her laptop one night and typed for hours, pouring out everything. The manipulation, the signs she'd ignored, the moments of doubt she'd buried under romantic ideals. She wrote about the guilt, the embarrassment, the rage. She wrote for every woman who'd ever been gaslit into silence. By the end of the week, she posted her first blog entry. My husband's mistress paid for my wedding, without knowing. It went viral overnight. Emails flooded in. Some from strangers thanking her for her courage. Others from women who had lived their own versions of betrayal. Some, heartbreakingly, still trapped in them. Amara responded to each one. She didn't want fame. She didn't want pity. She just wanted truth, and she gave it freely now. Vanessa reached out again. They weren't friends, not exactly. But there was a bond between them forged in the fire of betrayal. They'd met once more briefly, for lunch at a discreet hotel restaurant uptown. Vanessa was still impeccable, tailored suit, diamonds like armor. But there was something more human about her now. Her smiles were no longer tight. Her eyes no longer scanned the room for hidden threats. I sold the condo, she said simply, stirring her tea. Every corner of it smelled like him. Amara nodded. I burned my wedding dress. Vanessa blinked, then let out a surprised laugh. Good girl. They parted with a hug. Not warm, but real. Months passed. The buzz faded. People moved on. But Amara didn't return to the woman she was before. That girl, the one who let herself be loved with conditions and confusion, was buried beneath the ruins of that wedding. Instead, she built someone new. She cut her hair. Something bold and short and clean. She bought a new camera and started taking portraits of women who'd survived things. Scars, grief, sickness, infidelity. She made art out of resilience. She took up running. Not because she was chasing anything, but because she finally could. One night, as she walked along the beach, sand cool beneath her feet, a group of wedding guests passed her by. Strangers who had once watched her life implode in real time. They didn't recognize her. That pleased her more than she expected. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't mourning. She was reborn. Not in the triumphant, firework-filled way movies promised, but in a quiet, honest way. She had seen herself shattered. She had seen herself rebuilt. She had learned to love herself with the same devotion she once reserved for broken men. And as she stood at the shoreline, watching the moon carve silver trails across the waves, she whispered to the wind, "Thank you, Daniel, for showing me exactly what I'll never accept again." Then she turned barefoot, smiling whole, and walked back toward the light. Finally, at the end of the story, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more intriguing stories.